G'day guys, Justin here coming at you again with another Player of the Day video, this time for October 22nd, 2017. Only the 3 games today, as I mentioned yesterday. There were some interesting games played. We had Andrew Wiggins with that huge buzzer beater at the end versus OKC. We had the Nets taking over Atlanta in their game and winning from there. D'Angelo Russell playing well for them. You had John Collins playing well for the Hawks as well. As I mentioned, with OKC and Minnesota, you had Andrew Wiggins playing well with 27 points. You had Karl Anthony Towns playing well, 27 points and over a dozen rebounds, I do believe. He played very well, was in contention for my player of the day there. Westbrook with 30 points, 10 assists. He went absolute beast mode there in the last quarter, something like 14, 15 points in the last quarter. It really showed Paul George and Carmelo Anthony why they're probably second tier to third tier stars in this league now, particularly Paul George, who had a very average night. Steve Adams was very impressive for them, particularly with his rebounding numbers. He was in serious contention. My player of the day, just from an efficiency standpoint. DeMarcus Cousins, another well-rounded game today. Obviously playing the Lakers, you would expect that. They're only big guys really are Lopez and Bogut, who seriously aren't great defenders. Bogut's a good defender. He's no longer a great defender anymore, which is a shame. Lopez is more of an offensive player, and even then he's an outside offensive player. Larry Nance Jr. still has a way to go, and Julius Randle, obviously one of the most underwhelming players of the past few years, particularly to come out of a draft with all the potential. Broken leg doesn't help, but nonetheless, yeah, there's still plenty to work on, particularly when you look at someone like a Paul George and the way they came back. But my player of the day for today, the 22nd of October, 2017, is Anthony Davis. Davis had 27 points and a massive 17 rebounds here. Now, only 3 of those offensive, so again, a more defensive-minded game, and those numbers will show as well. The 3 assists, so his passing game was somewhat on point, nothing too exuberant, but enough to get the job done. DeMarcus Cousins was the one that was predominantly passing for the big men. 4 steals and 3 blocks, so he had a tremendous all-around defensive game, even better than that of Marcus Soles yesterday, who played really well. 50% shooting from the field, only 20% from deep. I don't like the big men who shoots 3-point shot. Obviously, Davis can play in an all-round spectrum as far as his scoring ability is concerned, so he can push out deep, and he does have the odd occasion where he does shoot well, but tonight was just not one of those nights, and again, he probably should have pushed in a little bit more, knowing that the defensive presence wasn't there for the Lakers. I mean, he could have had another 35-point game with ease. And 80% from the stripe for a big man, that's pretty good. You'd expect 70% for a big man. That's good to great for a big man. Free throw shooting, 80%, even better. So he's right on top there. Only the 1 personal foul, so when you want to take into account the fact that he had 4 steals and 3 blocks and only the 1 personal foul, you have to suggest a very efficient game defensively. 14 defensive rebounds as well. He clearly wasn't going over the back of too many players. Offensively, it does happen occasionally, but 3 offensive rebounds wasn't really under the glass enough for that. And only the 3 turnovers in 39 minutes. I mean, in contrast, Gasol had 7 turnovers in 36 minutes yesterday. Scored more points, but as I mentioned, the efficiency here, particularly defensively, when you want to look at the fact that 7 total, like including steals and blocks, a total of 7 defensive standout defensive efforts, so to speak, which resulted in only 1 foul. That's quite an efficient game. As I mentioned, a lot of problems here with the Lakers side, nothing great. I mean, the fact that the Pelicans only scraped over the line here is a little concerning. I mean, after that great performance they showed against the Warriors, to only go down by I believe it was 8 points to the Warriors to now. I mean, they won by 8 or 9 here, but this easily should have been a double-digit win. Well into the teens, maybe even 20 points easy here for the Pelicans. Nonetheless, didn't happen. A bit of an off night, obviously, from Davis is a little bit indicative of how the team was going. And low turnovers and fouls, you really would have thought with efficient defensive numbers, they should have won this game by a little bit more. As I mentioned earlier, the defensive rotations on the bigs are very much differentiating. You've got Larry Nance Jr., Julius Randle, Brook Lopez, and Andrew Bogut, who are the defensive lineups there for the bigs. Not a formidable defensive lineup. As I mentioned, Randle has been very underwhelming so far into his career. I mentioned the broken leg, but I do feel after seeing a Paul George and the way other guys, even Sean Livingston after his terrible knee injury, the way these guys are coming back and the way sports science is working now, I don't see any reason for someone like a Randle to come back bigger and stronger. So, again, it's a little disappointing for him. Larry Nance Jr., he's more of an athletic, explosive, offensive player. Defensively, he's still got a lot to work on in his game. And physically, he's more of a not wiry, but he's not a solid built player. So there's still a bit of work there. And when you're going up against someone like a Davis who's athletic, he's not very big, but he's athletic and can really use his centre of gravity to get into the post and down low and on the drive, almost in every facet, really. It's always going to be hard for someone here to defend. I mentioned Brook Lopez. He's not a defensive player. He's an outside offensive player for a big. So you can pretty much write off any chance of him trying to shut anyone down in the near time. And Andrew Bogut is just at the point now of his career where he's a lane filler and he's a space filler. He's a good defender when he needs to be, but he's not a good to great defender like he used to be. It's unfortunate that injury has stopped him from that, and in the rotation of what was the Warriors, his ability to exploit his defensive game just wasn't there with the way they run their offense and defense. So obviously that's gone to the side a little bit for Bogut. But that can't be helped. That's just the nature of the game and the way it's played. Excuse me. So we'll just run through here how Davis went. Again, as I mentioned, 27 points, 17 boards with 4 steals, 3 blocks on 50% shooting from the field as a pretty good game. So we'll see how we go from here. So he started the game on a block on a driving Larry Nance. He'd rotated on the pick and roll. Anthony Davis here. So, the pick and roll was set. Davis rotated and got the block on Nance. That was basically the opening defensive play there for the Pelicans. We come down the floor and we have a pull-up. His first shot made for Davis was a pull-up J on the elbow. Late contest there for Julius Randle. Really showed no respect for his jump shot. I believe he was probably protecting for a drive, which is understandable with Davis. And the way that, as I mentioned earlier, all these big guys scoring points, getting the paint, getting baskets, you can't touch a guy anymore. So to hold back and hold space, if they're going to charge it, they charge India, it's automatically a foul nowadays with no contact ever in that lane. So he was probably preparing for that, but he let Davis be way too far open, and he nailed the jumper, obviously. There was then a alley-oop dunk from a pass from Drew Holiday. He was open under the basket. Davis, Lopez had stepped up. He did the right thing to cover space to stop the layup, but unfortunately there was no one on the backside to cover Davis's alley-oop pass, and sure enough, he just jumped up, dunked the ball. Pretty easy stuff, pretty basic stuff that he's done all throughout the year. Contact layup made on Julius Randle and converted the and one. Again, Julius Randle's not a great defensive player. He did create some physicality on this drive, but by the time you start making contact on Anthony Davis in positions where he's on the drive, it's almost impossible to stop him from getting to the line or even making that and one, which he did here. We had an outlet pass from Davis to Moore for the layup over Clarkson, which was pretty impressive. He made the layup, and there was a couple of guys tried it other than where was I at? Over Clarkson, sorry. Other than Clarkson trying to contest it, I believe it was Cadwell Pope or even Larry Nance who had tried to block the shot. The ball went in, so that was a smart pass by Davis, especially when he was ahead of the play. So the only thing that could have happened was clear basket foul. Smart play there by both. We had a pick and roll there on Lonzo where he rolled to the hoop and scored over Bogut from a Drew Holiday pass. Lonzo Ball, again, exposed against a quality point guard. That's something we'll need to bring up. He played well against Phoenix, but there are a lot of college teams, a lot of pro teams in Europe and even down here in Australia that would beat the Phoenix Suns. That's always going to happen. But, yeah, as I mentioned, he had the pick and roll on Lonzo. He simply rolled off Lonzo to score over Bogut. Was always going to happen. As I mentioned, Bogut's just lost that extra step to the point where he's now probably 2 rungs below where he needs to be defensively. And Drew Holiday with the pass, as I mentioned, a quality point guard. Lonzo always seems to struggle against them and quality guards in general. I mean, he's obviously a first-year player, but just from assessing his game so far, he's just not handling the pressure of a quality player. And that seems to happen with a lot of rookies anyway, except for Ben Simmons, who seems to be playing pretty well. Grabbed an offensive rebound. There was a complaint here from Andrew Bogut that he grabbed it off the rim. I personally thought it was an offensive goaltend or offensive interference, they say it. But nonetheless, he grabbed the ball, Bogut screamed, and they made it back down the court. As Davis is coming down, he's turned up to the 45. Turned up at the elbow, and he just spun straight off Cadwell Pope, taking probably 2 steps from the elbow and finger rolled it. It was a pretty impressive play, probably player of the night as far as big men are concerned. Andrew Wiggins did destroy a few bloody rims playing against OKC, but For me to have a big guy with that sort of footwork, run the floor, and then finish at the hoop was nice to see. He then had an uncontested three. He was passing back and forwards with Cousins in the post when Cousins developed that low post position. Similar, as I mentioned, with all the big guys so far, they tend to want to develop that deep position, and then when they get double teamed, they flick the pass out. It's a smart move. It's similar to it's how Shaq used to play all the time. Shaq was just so big and strong that he'd back straight down into the post, automatically going to get a double coverage and then pass the ball straight out to a Kobe or a Rick Fox or a Derek Fisher or anyone that's waiting, a Glenn Rice, Mitch Richmond, all those guys. And that's similar to what Cousins and Davis are trying to do here. They establish one bloke in the post, get him as low down as possible, and once the open shot's there to be made, whether it be the guard or even back to the big man, they just give it out and kick it out for the three, which is exactly what happened here. I mean, you're not going to leave DeMarcus Cousins against this defensive front court by himself in the post. So the double came, kicked straight out. And as I mentioned, with Larry Nance sagging off Anthony Davis to try and help on the double team there, it was a late contest and nothing but net there for Anthony Davis. He was held on a fast break layup by Brandon Ingram. A great pass here from DeMarcus Cousins, bounce pass straight through, and he converted the end run off that. That was just two big men running on the floor. Now, they made the Lakers look really slow. I mean, they are big men, so they're not the fastest in the league, but they did make some of the guards of the Lakers look slow. So you can imagine how Lakers fans are feeling at the moment with that sort of production from their floor. As I mentioned, we keep going on from there. He blocked a Lonzo layup. This was one of two blocks he had on Lonzo. The second one was very big. We'll get to that, obviously. But, yeah, it was just typical. It was just typical of a Lonzo layup at the moment. He's obviously thrashing hard at the cup because he's not getting much going for him other than a few assists here or there. Guarded by Dante Cunningham, and Cunningham just really giving some physical D. Lonzo's kept pushing through it. Cunningham's back. And, yep, the second the shot's been released, it was tipped away by Anthony Davis. So another good defensive play there. As we continue on through, he then grabbed a 3-on-1 offensive rebound and put back the dunk off a Cousins' missed jump shot. It was quite impressive to see as he rose up against Cadwell Pope Ball and Larry Nance. He just goes straight up and grabs it and straight back down. There's not much you can do in a 3-on-1 situation usually, but he's just made them look absolutely stupid this past week. And again, signs there, as I mentioned, with the likes of Larry Nance there. Usually explosive. Lonzo Ball's not going to be great on the glass yet. Cadwell Pope's still sort of finding his feet, even though he's been in the league a couple of seasons. For Anthony Davis to jump up and grab that was phenomenal. A fair bit of physical contact there. Most points of the ball covered, except for the one that Davis got, obviously. As we kept going through, he then had a pick and roll from Holiday. Larry Nance was guarding him here in this situation. He's just picked and popped. Drew Holiday's given the ball a nice strong slam over Brook Lopez at the rim. I can't stress it enough. He's an outside offensive player. There's a strong breeze that would probably go straight through Brook Lopez at this point, the way he plays. He then had an assist on Antoine Moore's three. He was contested late by Kuzma, but it was nothing too significant. Plenty of space to get the shot up. Davis just drawing a man there to get the open three. Similar to an Ian Clark, it was just a pass back and forth. Clark got an off-ball screen, comes through, and was open. Julius Randle showed no respect. Again, as I mentioned, another player who should have developed by now that's really going nowhere. And finally, the altering block on Lonzo. Lonzo came up for a very clean layup, and Davis just come straight across the lane and took it cleanly. No foul, nothing. It was really clean, and it was arguably his best block of the game, and probably his most important as the Pelicans went on to win. Just a few notes here. So Davis, for the season, is the first player to receive 2 Player of the Day awards for me. He's claimed 2 of the 6 so far, so 33% if you want to be a smart ass there. First player for 2 plays, Player of the Award, start again. He's the first player with 2 Player of the Week, Player of the Day awards in a week. So again, he's on a bit of a roll. He has a serious case of taking Giannis from my Player of the Week category. We'll have to see how tomorrow goes. I'm unaware. I'll just go a double check here on who does play tomorrow, but it will be interesting to see what happens there. It's a tight contest. But Davis's numbers have been absolutely tremendous. I think if I had to do an East and West, I think there'd be no doubt my Player of the East is definitely Giannis, and my Player of the West is undoubtedly Anthony Davis. Just as let me just have a look here. We go look at tomorrow's games. And we have Milwaukee playing Charlotte. So we'll get one final look at Giannis before I assess my player of the day, and we'll see what happens there. But at the moment, if I was to judge it purely on conference, and Eastern Conference, it's definitely Giannis, and in the West, it's definitely Anthony Davis. So I don't think anyone's going to take that away from there. Depending on how Giannis goes tomorrow, will depend on who the player of the week is. But yeah, as I said, there's not much more to go through. How the Pelicans really using that big man offense well. There aren't many people that have been able to guard it. I mean, you've got the best defensive team arguably in the league, and the Warriors that couldn't stop it. These hopeless Lakers were once again hopeless. And whether they weren't doing it offensively, they were doing it defensively today, which was impressive to see. Again, I can't stress enough, though, you've got to look at who was defending the guys today. Larry Nance Jr., Julius Randle, Brook Lopez, and Andrew Bogut certainly aren't the most formidable front court defensive lineup. However, they did their best. As I mentioned, Randall really needs to hurry up and develop his game sooner rather than later. He hasn't done anything in the 3-4 years he's been in the league, and he doesn't look like doing anything from there. As we look at Larry Nance Jr., again, he's thin. He needs to solidify a bit more. He's explosive offensively, not explosive defensively. Lopez couldn't guard a stiff breeze if it went through him at the moment. Offensive outside player, that's purely what he is, and he's very lackluster on the board, so he's not going to create any physical presence there on the defensive boards, allowing for these good offensive opportunities that can come your way. And Andrew Bogut's just too far below being the defensive player he was to have any sort of a quality impact. Now, I did mention Lonzo Ball, and I wanted to bring up the fact that today he played on a Drew Holiday, someone who's got plenty of years of experience in the league, and in his opening game, he did take on Patrick Beverley. Now, obviously, the Lakers did play the Suns a couple of days ago, and as we all know, the Suns obviously lost to the Lakers. But it begs the question of just who Lonzo Ball's been playing on and how his numbers are looking. I mean, to be a Rookie of the Year, you've got to prove that you can hang with basically anyone that's playing the game. I believe he did play on an Eric Bledsoe and a Devin Booker. So it's a little hard to see considering that Eric Bledsoe in the past 24 to 48 hours has asked for a trade. So you can't say much about that. Just to double check over here, yeah, definitely Bledsoe and Booker. But at the same time, they're not the most quality player going around. Devin Booker is a high quality player for his age. He's only just turned, I believe he's barely 21. He's 20, I think. Hasn't just turned, I think he turns 21 in a couple of days. But, or he may have already turned 21. I know he's 21 or thereabouts. But, I mean, you're not looking at guys that are absolute standout, top of the line point guards. You've only got to look at a Patrick Beverley. He's arguably the best defensive guard in the league, hands down. And Drew Holiday is a very quality point guard who's had that experience in the league, far more quality than a Devin Booker or a Eric Bledsoe as far as guards are concerned. So it'll be interesting to see when the Lakers play their next game who they come up against. I'll have a quick look at that, just so you can get a rough idea of what I'm looking at and what many people are looking at as far as Lonzo's ability to play. So in 3 games, he's come up against a Devin Booker who played really well. I believe he had 25, 11 rebounds and 8 assists in that game anyway. So Lonzo's defense there wasn't the greatest. But in saying that, Eric Bledsoe also had good numbers. You can't rely on both guards to be guarded by the one player, but at the same time, when you're only putting up very subpar numbers to a Drew Holiday or a Patrick Beverley, then there is a question to be asked. So we don't have any more Lakers games this week. So this definitely rules out Lonzo's ability for player of the week. I didn't think he was anywhere near it anyway. So then the next game's against John Wall. I don't need to say much more there. Their next game is against John Wall, arguably the best pure point guard in the league from a passing standpoint. He does score. He is more a predominant scorer, but if you want to talk about best passing guards in the league, it's arguably a John Wall. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes against that different competition there in Washington. Will be a hell of a lot different to what he's been receiving lately. Even more of a step up from a Drew Holiday. Probably in line with a Patrick Beverley-esque point guard is John Wall. I mean, Beverley's tremendous defensively, not great offensively. And John Wall's pretty mixed. So, yeah, I mean, John Wall's a top 5 point guard in this league, arguably a top 5 guard in the league. So there's no reason why Lonzo can't try and prove himself in this game, and vice versa, why John Wall can't simply come out and dominate the young rook. But as for the Lakers, there's really not much more going for them at the moment. They've got no defensive efforts going there. They've got a young point guard who's, when it comes up against good to quality, good to very good to great point guards and opposition, falls at the water at the moment. Again, 3 games in, it's hard to judge. We'll see later in the season, but it's going to take a lot of work here for the Lakers to be very competitive. And in saying that, I think the Pelicans will probably be even a little disappointed that they didn't come away with a bigger win. So again, just to refresh your memory, my player of the day is Anthony Davis, 27 points, 17 rebounds, only 3 offensive, very defensive game for Davis. 3 assists, 4 steals and 3 blocks on 50% from the floor, 20% from deep, and 80% from the stripe. Only the 1 foul and 3 turnovers in 39 minutes. Extremely efficient game, offensively and defensively. More defensively, 1 foul with at least a minimum 7 defensive efforts there is tremendous. For an overall score of .235, which brings him to the very top of my table for scores this season so far. Hassan Whiteside also had a .235. However, that came in a loss, so it's not as obviously impactful as that of a win. As I refresh your memory over my players of the day so far, opening night we had LeBron James. On the 18th, we had Hassan Whiteside. The 19th, DeAndre Jordan. 20th, Anthony Davis. Yesterday, Marc Gasol. And obviously today, Anthony Davis. Again, guys, thanks for checking out the video. Thanks for checking out my channel. Again, appreciate the views. Appreciate you guys checking out my content. Flick me a thumbs up button. Hit that subscribe button. Hell, leave a comment. Let me know who your player of the day was, who you think should have been my player of the day, how you think the system's going so far. Comments on the Pelicans, how you feel their 2-man games going so far, particularly with Cousins running the post and Davis on the outside. You know, the 1-2 combination, how effective you think that can be going forward. Comments on the Lakers, how you feel their front court's going to go for the rest of the season with little to no defensive impact coming from them, and where you think Lonzo's going to go defensively. I think there's a lot of work to do. But, again, you might see it a little differently. That's just me. Anyway, guys, hit me up on Twitter, Justin_G_Bryan. Again, my player of the day, for October 22nd, 2010 is Anthony Davis for the New Orleans Pelicans, the second nomination for the week, and the first player to 2 Player of the Day awards. Again, see you guys tomorrow when I do my Player of the Day for the 23rd of October, 2017.